What's going on in the Arc modding community? This is jslay here. I'm going to show you guys how to set up new structure variants. Really quick tutorial for the new guys. I'm going to touch on a couple things. We're going to work on, setting up GenericMod, making sure that it's got its bad values pulled out of it so that you don't propagate that to other mods. We're going to talk about how ADK bootstraps your assets. We're going to touch a little bit on some blueprint work, some graph work, just to give some guys some intro into it so it's not so overwhelming and over the head for you right off the top. So you get a little bit of a taste of what it's like. Not too much complicated stuff. Um, we're going to go over making a new structure, as I said, specifically a storage container. We're not going to talk about crafting stations such as like the workbench and stuff like that, and the fabricator. Really just a new vault. We're going to make some new vaults, a small one and a medium one, as you see here. And that's about it. Let's get started. Excuse me. Let's get started with setting up GenericMod. First thing we want to do is let's go ahead and open up the map. No, that's me setting up files. I'll get to that in a second. So the first thing you see, you get black screen here. We want to come up here to settings, world settings. Make sure we get a world settings tab over here. There's only two things we need to worry about more than anything. Is we want to reset that to be blank. We do not want to force load a map, and we will just clear the path here. We always want to be defining our own Primal game data override in our own mod maps. So now we want to open up Primal game data GenericMod. I've already got it opened up here. It takes a little while to open the blueprint. Don't be alarmed if stuff hangs. That's normal for ADK. So we're going to click this eye. We're going to go to show only modified properties. This is going to become one of your best friends starting out. So we want to clear these two values by clicking these little yellow arrows right here. This is to reset everything to default value. And we're going to do that and do that. We don't want to define our own game mode. We want to stay with the default game mode. And I'm not really going to go into that, but basically we're creating a clean and stackable mod. Therefore, we will not be able to use a game mode. Game modes are only for core and total conversion mods. So let's save and then compile. You want to save first and then compile because ADK rarely can crash when you click compile. And if you hadn't saved, well, yeah. So once we've got that done, everything goes away because we're showing only modified. That's fine. Now we've got our GenericMod set up to make further mods down the road from these files, so that they're set up ready to go so that we don't propagate anything else unwanted for unexpected behaviors for our mods from there. Now I've already created a vaults folder here for this tutorial. Right click, new folder, name the folder. I've also already copied these files over, but basically you click the GenericMod, Primal game data. As I said, we're doing a clean and stackable so we don't get a game mode. We're going to copy this over to vaults, copy here. I've already done that, and I've already renamed them just for the sake of speeding things up. So we will open up, let's uncheck, don't save. Those are really just temporary files that are in the background from copying other files. So let's set up our map. Again, clear that, save that. And we want to actually inject our Primal game data override for our mod into the map for our mod. Now I tend to name the map name the same as the folder name for the mod. It just helps the cooker recognize things better. So we'll save the map again. And we'll open up our Primal game data. Now let's give this mod a name. We'll call this Vaults. And mod description will be medium, small, and medium vaults. And we'll just save that. Now the only thing we really need to do in here is set up the additional blueprint Engram classes and additional storage structures to place. We'll do that in a moment. We'll get to that once we get our file set up. So let's just save and compile just to get that out of the way. We'll minimize that for now. So what we need to do now is we need to start copying in the assets for our mod that we're going to use to create things. So Primal Earth is the folder that contains all of the Arc assets that are built into the game for the most part. There's a couple of here and there that actually exist elsewhere. Not going to go into the details on that. So storage box huge is the original vault, vanilla vault from Arc. So we'll click here, hold shift, click the other one. That selects all of those. And we are going to actually first, let's create a new folder here. Let's call it Small Vault. Back over to Primal Earth. Hold Shift. And then we're going to copy. So now we need to rename all of this. Let's rename this Small Vault. Small Vault. You guessed it. Small Vault. And actually, here, didn't mean to open that, pardon me. Here, we're actually going to leave storage box and name it Small Vault, just so it matches all the other storage containers, like the small one, the large one, and now the vault and small medium vault. So now that's all done. Those are all saved. So now, let's go through getting the Engram set up. So as you know, you got to have an Engram. Only a few options here to even be aware of. Engram requirement sets. This is the Engrams you need to know ahead of time to unlock this Engram. So if we wanted to, we could make it to where they need to know the large wood storage box first. Let's go ahead and maintain that because this is going to be a vault. Let's lower the level of this since it's going to be a small vault. Let's lower the Engram cost. And since I'm not setting up a crafting station, or I'm not trying to inject my Engram into a crafting station, things we're not going to touch on today, I'm going to just go ahead and give the blueprint to the player inventory. This will allow them to craft the blueprint in their inventory. Now the other thing that's really important here is we need to set the blueprint entry so it knows what primal item to link to this Engram entry. So we will go over to our content browser. We will select our primal item structure, small vault, which is the item inside of the inventory. Inject that in there. And now we're done. We don't need to do anything else here in the Engram. Close that. Let's actually close generic over here. We don't need that. We'll leave our primal game data up. Now I should kind of go over with a storage with a structure, specifically a storage container. Just a normal structure, there's three basic things you need, and then with the storage container, there's an extra one you need, which is the primal inventory component for the storage container or crafting station per se. But the three main ones are Engram entry, primal item structure, which is the actual item in the inventory for the player to drop or transfer between inventories, or to use the item to then place the structure. And then you actually have the structure actor itself, which is what gets placed in the world. And then, as I said, because this is a storage container, there's a primal inventory component here that we will then be linking into the storage actor here that gets placed in the world. So we've already got our Engram entry set up. Let's go ahead and set up our primal item structure. Let's take a look here. And let's just click the eye, show only modified properties. And now we can kind of see a rough, quick, and easy set of changes wildcard is made from the base parent class here, PrimalItem structure generic. There's some other stuff that's not defined in PrimalItem structure generic that is defined to make the vault, such as like mesh and stuff like that. Not really going to go into that at this moment, but not on the PrimalItem, but on other stuff. But for now, let's go. Let's get this all set. So we're making a small vault. And then we are going to change not a large, but a small. Basic item weight. Let's do a third. We're doing third stats here. What's a third of 82? What, 27? Just rough guess. Base crafting resource requirements. So this is where you set your resource requirements to craft the item. Normal vault has 300 ingots needed, 60 chitin paste, 30 oil, 60 polymer. Again, we're going third stats here. 100, 20, 10, 20. So crafting require exact resource type. Very rarely are you actually going to set that to true. There's just some very special cases. It's not normally used. I would never recommend using it unless you're aware of actually what that is. I'm not going to go into it. It's more of an understanding of parent and child classes more than anything. Max item quantity, we're going to make it have a stack size of 10 inside the inventory so that they can have 10 vaults per stack. Vault icons normal. Structure to build. Now this is what gets most people. They'll link one of the two, and I'll show you the second one in a moment, but we need to make sure that structure to build is linked to our structure actor that we want to build, and then in the structure actor there's another place that we need to link back to the consumable item, which is this PrimalItem structure file we're in right now. So let's select storage box vault, small vault, that's our in-world actor. Inject that in there. Crafting requires inventory component. Now, as I was saying, we're not going to go over crafting stations or anything like that, but this is basically where you would say this item is crafted in this inventory component. Normally the vault has to be crafted within the fabricator. We've already set up our Engram entry to allow us to craft it in our inventory, so we are actually just going to trash that array. Default folder paths. Now, I've heard rumors, some guys on the Arc Modding Discord have figured out how to set this up. I'm not aware of it normally. I'm normally a graph blueprint modder, but I wanted to get through some of this stuff with you guys to try and help break down some of the and clear up some of the confusion as to where some people are missing some things here. So if you really want to understand what this is mainly for crafting stations, and guys on Discord, the Arc Modding Discord, they can definitely break this down and explain this a whole lot better than I can. So let's just go ahead for the time being, save and compile this. I think that's actually all we need to do in this file here. So now let's hop over to our actual in-world actor, and just to prove that to you, go to components, and here is our vault, your lovely friendly vault. So now let's do a couple things here. We're going to be hopping back and forth between a couple blueprints in a moment. So, pause if you need to, pay attention, go through what I'm doing here and try and understand everything that I'm doing. Feel free to ask questions with some timestamps if you need to on the Arc Modding chat. I'm sure somebody can break down if I don't explain it right or well enough, or if English is not your native language. There's plenty of guys on the Arc Modding Discord chat that can definitely help you out with this stuff. Just post a timestamp to this video where you're confused and ask them to break that part down for you, and there should be no problem. Now on vaults, this is kind of a special thing on vaults. Demolish inventory deposit class. It's supposed to be set to itself. This is the file we're in. This is the file we're in. This should automatically be handled because they're using self-references. Not going to go into self-references right now. That's another thing. Structure settings class, that's the damage class, so vaults are broken by explosives. You could change that if you wanted this vault to take damage from, swords, or if you wanted it to take damage from hatchets or spears or fists even. This is where you would change that. Consumes primal item. This is that second item I was referring to that most people forget back here in primal item structure, where we link the structure to build to this file. Now we need to link this file back to that primal item, and it is a requirement as far as I am aware of that it has to go back to the same item that is placing the structure. Even if you're trying to make it to where it just places as like an admin item to place, I don't think you can quite do that. I could be wrong. I just know this is what causes a lot of people headaches, is those two items between these two files cause a lot of confusion sometimes. Color sets, not really going to go over that. There's a whole map thing in the textures for that you've got to set up. If it's got it, leave it, use it, whatever, abuse it. It's there. Requires placement on structure floors. I don't like vaults having to be placed on structure floors, so I'm going to take that off. But there is a couple things that we're going to need to change beyond that. We'll get into that. As I said, we're doing third stats, so that's 16,700 or so, rough guess. This is also kind of what the player receives in return from hitting your structure. What damage to their durability is set right here. Destroyed mesh is correct. Descriptive name. So this is the green name when you're looking at a structure. We want to change that to small vault. Let's just save that for now. Compile that for now. Let's uncheck modified properties only. And let's just go through the placement stuff. Got a bit of stuff to set up there. So we're going to need to do a little bit of debugging here to set up placement, encroachment, check offset, box extent, and scale. These are the three main things you're going to need to be aware of, and I'm going to go through that. You're going to have to bear with me, though. It's a little bit of a trial and error of messing around with things, but we'll get through that. Not going to go through snap points at all. That's a whole nother thing unto itself. Force placing on ground we want enabled, but we also want to take anything as ground. We want to be able to stack these vaults. So that's kind of one thing we want to do there. And to also stack these, and if I was going to set up snap points, I would want to do something like this. Only foundation if snap to foundation. This is what allows you to build like one wall out to the side with no foundation underneath it, but not any further. Along with, there's another float value around here that's maximum foundation support 2D build distance is what defines how far out laterally you can build without a foundation. So if you increase that, you could build, say, 10 walls out sideways without a foundation. Not really going to go into that much further. I think that's all we have to do here. Let's just save, compile, and for now we do got to go back to there. So now this is the inventory component. We want to again show only modified properties. We're going to change this to small vault. That's the name inside the inventory screen. Again, third stats, we want 50 slots. The generic, this description here is generic enough. We'll leave that. Let's uncheck this. There's one more thing I want to make you guys aware of and discuss. It is absolute max inventory items. So by default, every structure has this set at 300. I like to try and do a little bit more effort in trying to prevent against exploits so that the game stays balanced and stuff like that. Absolute max inventory items basically is the overflow from your max inventory items for stuff that spoils and such because of different stack sizing and stuff like that. You need to have the structure be able to allow it to overflow past that max inventory items when things are spoiling. Now, I scale this in comparison to the max inventory items. So at 50, I would say do 75, a difference of 25. But let's say if I wanted 300 slots, I would have a difference of, maybe 75 or 100, right? Just because you would have more available slots where things could spoil out. So you need to be able to increase that, but we don't want to make it so large that it gives somebody a chance to exploit that to gain extra inventory slots in the structure. I think that's all we need to set up here on the inventory component. So now that we got the inventory component set up, let's go back over to the storage box actor that gets placed in the world. You see it's already got this original one from the vault. Now if we made a child of this, which we did not do, you would be forced to use this primal inventory component, and you could do some fancy graph work just to switch it out, yada yada yada. Not going to go into that, but I made copies instead of childs of the vault, mainly because I don't want any changes that wildcard makes to the vanilla vault to propagate to my vaults. I want to be in control of everything that happens to my vaults. So I'm going to have the option to also change this inventory component out, which is what I do want to do. So we'll delete that. And if for some reason a component doesn't show up here, go over and save and compile it, and then save and compile this blueprint, and then they should be showing up. So we want the small vault. SV small vault is my slave vault's small vault. We're not going to I'm recreating that for you guys here today for the tutorial. So now we've got that in. We can come down here. We can see it says store your items. Max inventory is now 50. Our absolute max is 75. The inventory name override is small vault. That's right. Save, compile. Now our structure is basically set up, ready to go. There's just a couple more things we need to do to get it built in to our Primal game data and stuff like that to make it to where it's a usable mod. But before we get to that, there's a couple of other things I want to do. I want to touch on the graph just for a moment, and then we're going to duplicate this out so I can show you how to easily copy and slightly modify your changes again for another item you're making if you wanted to make variants of your item and stuff like that. So give me just a second. Let me Okay, let's go over to the graph here. And give me just a second. I'm actually going to open up my other one here for reference to save time. So we're done with the inventory component. We can close that. I think we are done with the primal item structure, so let's close that. And now we're sitting here on the graph. So the graph is a way that you can implement your own custom logic. It's very, very powerful. This is how my mod offline raid protection works. It is basically a massive amount of graph work to accomplish what it does. And this is how you can really get in there and do some really awesome and unique things with your mod. So first things first, almost always you're going to be starting with an event begin play. And if we have an event begin play, we're going to have a delay. That's just how it works. If you don't have this delay, you can have some unexpected behavior where event begin play does not fire. Just part of how Arc initializes things. Now we're going to do a node here to handle some replication, but I'm not going to go over so much exactly, how to handle replication or what replication is. again, this is a really quick and intro tutorial into getting into ADK. But basically, there's a couple things we want to do here to just kind of do some better handling of our code so that it's only running when we want it to run, so that there's not errors down the road or anything like that. So because that we want to run some custom script here so that we're going to make it to where admins can set the actual max health for these items, we're going to do some things so that it doesn't execute this code on the client, mainly because the client can't run this code. We're going to do some things to make sure that if it's a non-dedicated multiplayer host, such as I'm started up Arc, I'm hosting a non-dedicated server, and I'm the one placing the structure, there's a little bit of special handling we need to do to make sure it doesn't execute while I'm placing the structure. And then if it's a pure dedicated server, there's not much handling we have to do there. I'm sorry, my mic died because SteelSeries headsets suck. I'm not going to go into that. Regardless. So, and then if it's a pure dedicated server, there's really no extra handling we have to do because dedicated servers do not have the actor spawned until the structure is placed. So let's go ahead and get right into that. So we want to check, is it a preview structure? And we want to make sure it is not a preview structure, so that if it's not being placed, and I'm holding B and I click the graph to get a branch node, which is like a if true, if false, off of a bool condition. If it's a non-dedicated host and the player that is hosting the server is placing the structure, then we do not want to do anything. So it would be false. If they've already placed the structure, I know this is kind of slightly confusing, but the structure is not a preview structure, that means it is a placed structure, then we want to run our code here. And because it's the player host that's doing this, they are technically authority. Like I said, not going to go into replication too much. That's about the most in-depth we're going to go. Get game mode. Game mode has to be handled on authority side. Dedicated server is authority, and the player host in a non-dedicated server multiplayer game is the authority. Which is why we're having to do a little bit of this handling right here, because we're handling game mode. So we're going to drag off of this blue pin to get a cast node. Very important that you're dragging off the blue pin. Context sensitive must be checked, so actions taking a game mode reference. So give me the nodes that are relevant to a game mode reference. And one of those is a cast a shooter game mode because it is relevant to this overall game mode reference. So true, and there. Let's bring this down a bit just to make it cleaner. So now what casting does is it allows us to get the specific variables from this game mode reference. If it is the shooter game mode, which is a child of the basic overall game mode, it allows us to get the variables and references outside of the shooter game mode. A little slightly confusing, I know. Once it clicks, it's basically I'm stepping into the shooter game mode blueprint, and I'm pulling out variable information from that blueprint. You could cast to other things. You could cast to this blueprint, pull out information from this blueprint, from this vault as another actor, and so forth. One of the functions in here is get int option. We're going to use an int because we don't really want them to define a float like a 0 or 20.5 health value. That's not standard for Arc, even though the health is technically set up as a float value. That's not what we're going to do, but I'm going to show you how to handle that. So the section name, let's just call this, I was going to call it small vaults, but let's just call it vaults because we're going to do a medium vault. and small vault health. Section name is that bracketed area, like server settings and stuff like that. And then you have that next section, like ORP, and you have that next section, like slay vaults. And then the option name is the variable within that subsection. So that's how that works. We want to check to see if it is greater than 0. If they do not define this value in the INI, game user settings INI, it's going to return 0. And we don't want to set our structure health to 0, obviously. So if it returns 0, that means they did not set it, and we are not going to deal with it. But if it returns greater than 0, so true, we're going to do some stuff here. So I'm going to set up a couple of variables now because there's a couple of things I want to do to kind of better handle this and make it a smoother experience for the user, so it doesn't feel like things are kind of bugging out. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a couple of variables to handle detecting when they change the INI value, if they remove the INI value, if they change it from 50 to 100 or whatever. We're going to set up some variables, and I'm going to show you how to do that. It's pretty simple stuff. It's really not as complicated as it might look, but hopefully I can help break that down for you. So let's go ahead and start working toward that. We're going to create 3 variables here. Let's call this one first placement, since this is a bool, and let's actually bring this up some so we can see our details down here. Let's create another one. We are going to call this INI vault health, and let's set it to a float. And let's create another one here, saved health. So saved health is going to be a variable that we are going to use to detect when they change the INI health value on a server restart. We're going to click Save Game so that this value persists through server reboots, and it gets compiled down and serialized into the ARC save game for the save world. And then for INI Vault Health, everything default here is fine. We do not want to save game. We want it to kind of reset back to default every time. First placement here, we want to save the game because we want this bool to get flipped after it's been first initially placed, so that we can detect other different types of logic for that, and I'll go into that in a moment. So let's save and compile so we can set some default values on these variables. You have got to compile the blueprint before you can set any kind of default value here on these variables. First placement, we're going to set true because we're going to flip it to false further down the road here. INI Vault Health, because now we're setting up a INI option for admins to define their health for these vaults. The health value over here is practically useless, and I'll demonstrate that in a moment, but the logic we're defining in the graph is really going to override this health defining of this health right here. So, and to demonstrate that, we'll set this to 4,000 because the value of this variable is what's going to be our new default health value for this storage container. And then saved health, we've already got set up for save game, and we're just going to leave that to 0 because we're going to be modifying it within the graph here. So now that we've got that set up, let's save and compile. And if they did set a value that was greater than 0, then we are going to want to set INI Vault Health. So I'm going to hold Alt and drag this out onto the graph. That gives me a set node. You can also grab it and just drag it out without holding Alt and get a get set. If you hold Control and drag it out, you're going to get a get. Just kind of some helpful things there in the graph. You can hold Control and move things around here, or you can hold Alt and click to disconnect. Some more useful things there. So we're going to take that, and then we're going to take the value from INI, because they defined it, and set it to our INI Vault Health variable. This is what's called a typecast node. We're taking an integer, typecasting it to a float. That's what we want. That's normal. Not going into typecasting right now, but that's what we want. So now that we've got our health value that we want, our max health value that we want for our vault, we need to set that on the vault. And if they didn't define, then it's going to default to the default value for ini vault health. So false can stay unhooked from this for now, and we are going to set max health and hook that up and hook that up and hook that up. So now that is set. Now, because this is set up, we also need to do some other things to make sure for the UI UX experience, UI UX experience, user experience. Anyway, we need to make sure that we set it up so that if the max health that we just set is lower than the current health, so let's say the vault health was 50,000 and they change it to 20,000, we need to make sure that we bring down the current health to match that, so that we don't have current health at 50,000 while max health is showing at 20,000. Now, it wouldn't really mean if the structure took damage, the structure would automatically roll to 20,000 and then apply the damage points. But it's a visual thing, and we're trying to make things look clean and professional, right? I mean, that's why we're here doing this. So let's get in here and do this. So we are going to check the current health by getting the replicated health. And we want to see if replicated health is greater than our ini vault health. And I'm going to create a reroute note here to make it a little bit cleaner for you guys. And we're going to set up a couple of other conditions here that we want to check for some kind of like better error handling and some kind of like a catch-all in a sense, in case something for some reason that goes wacky or something. So the other thing that we want to check is we want to know if the ini vault health changes from the previous instance of the server running. So if they shut down the server and they change the health value, and let's say they go from 20,000 to 100,000, we don't want them to have to repair the vault to get back up to 100,000 health. So we want to check to see if the ini vault health is different than the stored last known health, max health value that they had set. So the way that we're going to do that is ini vault health. Here's our reroute node. If it does not equal, so exclamation equal sign, if it does not equal our saved health, and I can right click and get the same variable as I can from here. And then kind of as a catch-all, and this is actually could technically be used as a first placement as well, since saved health should never be 0 except on first placement. We're going to throw in another catch-all, kind of, self-protection, error handling kind of thing. Let's put that in there, equals. So if saved health equals 0, and then we want to say if any of these conditions are true, we want to mess and modify with the current health. So let's drag off here, type OR. We want an OR boolean. And we're going to attach here. Now we can add a pin here to add in another one here. So if any one of these ends up returning true, this OR node will return true on this side, right? So we can drag off, type branch. Now we have our branch. Let's hook this up. Boom. All right, let's just get it condensed a little bit better here. So now, when we're dealing with current health and structure health in general through the blueprint graph, there's a couple things to keep in mind. You always need to define the max health first. if you're changing the max health, and then you need to set current health in a special way. I'm not sure why it's done this way, but it just is. So we need to set current health in a special way. We need to set replicated health first, and then we need to set health. Why there are two, I am not sure, but that's what it is. So we're going to do that. So if any of those are true, we're going to modify current health, and we're going to set current health to the max health value. So let's add a reroute node to keep things clean here. Drag this over here. Add another reroute node. Let's actually drag these up just a hair to make it a little bit cleaner. And reroute here and reroute. Now we want to set our saved health. Since now we have a new saved health, we want to set it because something changed that is causing us to modify current health. We're going to set saved health, and that is it for that. Now, I want to build in a little bit of a special thing, mainly because this is a storage container. It's kind of a thing that I do, mainly just because I'm old school. Back in the day when Arc was first released, there used to be ways you could actually brute force pin codes. Arc's done some stuff that has prevented a lot of that, but I'm kind of old school. I'm stuck in my ways, and I'm going to show you guys kind of a way to set a null pin code, which allows you to protect against any kind of pin hacking, because technically a pin does not exist. Now be aware with doing this, tribe alliances, because there's no pin set, or people that are not part of the tribe or have normal access to the structure without using the pin with a pin set, they will not be able to get in whatsoever. There's no way for them to get into this structure. So just something to keep in mind there. So let's go ahead and get this done. So I'm going to hold Control, drag out first placement for a get node. I'm going to hold B and click for a branch, connect the two. We're going to hook false over here. And just because I want to continue through my execution pattern here. So that is that. Yes, okay. So first placement, and all we've got to do to do that special pin handling, like I'm talking about, by setting a null pin, is by setting is pin locked to true. And since this is first placement, and we only want to do this when they first place it, we don't want to keep doing that, resetting, a pin and this and that. If they clear the pin, we only want to do this on first placement, and then we want to never do this again so we don't get in their way. We just kind of want to set it up on first placement. So to do that, hold Alt, drag out first placement, and we're going to have first placement set to false, because we've got it set to true here, and because we have it set to save game, and this will never ever run again, this can never ever happen again besides the first time they place that structure. Because we also checked for is preview structure here. Don't worry about that error, it's just because we haven't compiled the blueprint down yet. And then we want to, since we're modifying replicated values, kind of be aware that this can cause some lag if you're changing a whole bunch of actors at once. But since we're only changing the one actor on structure placement, we're going to go ahead and replicate on these values. And replicate now. And that is that for the graph work. Now admins can set custom INI health values, and we can detect the changes of those health values, and we've got a little special code in here to set a null pin for extra security, I guess you could call it. And that's that. That's all we need for that. Now let's hop in. Let's actually go back to here, Primal game data. Now let's type in additional, I could type. So we don't want to modify any of the master array item sets or anything like that. We only want to be modifying and dealing with the additional arrays here. So additional, in our case, additional Engram blueprint classes right here, and then additional structures to place. So we're going to tell Arc that we want to add 2 more structures for players to be able to place. So let's add, well, for right now, we're just going to do the small vault, and then I'll show you how to duplicate this over for, say, a medium vault. Additional Engram. So Engram, I should have just gone through the context browser. This was my mistake, and now I have to live with it. And now you have to live with it. Oh, lordy. All right. Engram, entry, small vault. Looky there. And now, to save us all the pain, back over to here, our storage box, small vault, put that in there, and that's all we technically have to do there. Save and compile. It takes a moment for Primal game data files. So now we still have our vault map loaded up. Let's go back over here to maps and open up test map. No, we don't want to save any of these. These are all temp files from copying. And we have our test map loaded up. Your test map's not going to look like this. I set that up for testing stuff. So now to be able to test our mod, we need to set our Primal game data override. So content browser. Oh, don't do this to me, baby. This stupid bug. Alright, so now we need to small vaults. Primal game data vaults. Click the arrow, put it in there. You can save it, but that's going to cause you to have longer startup times on ADK, because then it's going to have to parse through Primal game data stuff on load. Sometimes that's desirable, sometimes it's not. Just depends what you're trying to do here. So one thing we can do is we can content browser. Let's come in here. Our primal item structure. So this is the item that players craft and get in return for them to use to place. It's the item in their inventory. And the way we can get the spawn code for that is right click it and copy reference. Then I can come in here and click play. Let's make sure I've got start on current camera instead of player start. Yeah, I don't care about dedicated right now. That's technically it, because I was setting up other stuff for testing. So cheat, give item, quote mark, paste, quote marked, quote mark. We set a stack size of 10, so let's go for 11, and technically we're only supposed to be able to cheat in this max stack size, 1 false. Gave me 10, which is what we want. There's 10 vaults, and we didn't set the scale. That's okay. We'll get to that in a second. So we can see here it says small vault, pin coded, even though we didn't set a pin code. And remember, we had set the ionized vault health value to 4,000, even though that health value in the default options was set to 16,700. That's our blueprint graph work doing that. So that's working. 50 slots, says small vault, everything here is perfect. So let's close that, let's hit escape, let's scale our vault, wrong blueprint. Yeah. Here we go. Alright. Components. Now, my root transform is basically the root scene controller, I guess you could say, in a sense, where all your particle effects are going to end up being attached to everything for that actor that's in the world. It's technically should be, in a sense, attached to the myRoot transform, so that we can then scale everything all together just by scaling the transform itself. And as I said, we're going to go third stats, but because we're also going to make another vault that's going to be half stats and half scale, for stacking purposes, a third doesn't match up with a half, which doesn't match up, the third half to a full doesn't match up very well. So for scale wise, even though they're third stats, we're going to go quarter scale, just so that it stacks nicely and looks clean. So as you can see, it shrunk way down, and you saw that big vault we placed a moment ago. It was way too big, so we'll save, compile. Let's minimize this. We'll hit play. Let's spawn it in again. And we now have a small vault. Now, you can see it saying it's obstructed, even though it's nowhere near obstructed when it's this. It should only be obstructed when I'm that close to it, So what we're going to do is hit tab, come up here to our storage box here, come over here, let's go to placement. So now we get to have fun playing with the placement, encroachment, check, offset. Oh boy. So, kind of a quick, dirty way to set this up. It's just basically you're going to be plugging in a bunch of different values. I'm going to reduce, so the encroachment check offset is where am I going to start my tracing out of my boxes for the encroachment. My box extent is how big are my boxes, and then the placement scale is how far apart are my boxes going to be. That's about the best way I can explain that. I'm sorry if that doesn't make any better sense. But hopefully it will whenever I start kind of plugging numbers in over here and dealing with this. I think it will help make a little bit more sense. So I'm clicking back in the window here. I've already got my console up. Debug structures 1. And now you can see I've got all these boxes here. And when I bring that in, you see that one box here, it turns red and I can no longer place. So we're going to be modifying all of those, and you can see it goes all the way up there for the large vault, right? For the original vault. So we're going to be modifying all of this. And I'll show you how to do that. So first things first, let's go ahead and bring our scale and our box sizes themselves. I mean, one box here is almost the entire size of that vault. So we need to bring the box size itself down. So let's make this 5, 5, 5. I like to keep my boxes, nice and square. There are some special cases where you might not want that. And then for scale, let's just say 25, 25, 25 just to start out with. And here, let's just say 72 maybe. So tab. Now we need to take the structure away and we need to try and replace. Now, get this out of the way. You can see that's come way down. The boxes are a lot smaller. It's a lot more dense. Things are looking a lot more appropriate for what we're wanting here. And this is always hard to judge because you can never really see too much around, where's the backside of my boxes and stuff like that. But so we just have to kind of guess as best as we can, and kind of coming over here. We'll be able to help test our back collision and stuff like that to make sure that we're getting the proper collision sets and stuff like that. Now on the front here, you can see it's barely sticking out just a hair too much, and you can see it's definitely sticking too far out width-wise. So let's just modify the Y here to kind of shrink that in. So we're going to say 23. 00 is what it was. So now you can see that box is just perfectly, almost perfectly in there. Or let's see here. No, not quite. We're getting there. So we're getting close. So let's go to 20. And that's still not good enough. So let's go to 15. Still not quite good enough. Oh, well, it'd help if I was messing with the right one. Well, my Y is getting close. We're just in there, so let's go back out a little bit. 20. And I'm too wide again, so let's say 17. That's pretty dang close. Let's get my Z offset down. Let's say 50. And let's keep coming down. Let's say 40. So let's shrink my X to the front to back. Let's go 22. And that's about perfect. Yeah, we'll stick with that. So let's go ahead and get that placed. Let's see how close we can get it. So not quite as close as I want to be able to get. So let's see here. Start placing another one. And my Z scale is still a little off. So let's go to 27. Still a little off. Let's go to 30. And now we're too far, so let's go to 29. And that looks about perfect. So let's suck in the X just a hair more. Say 21. That's closer. Still not what I want. So let's go to 20. And you can do, 20 and a half, 21 and a half. Let's just go 20 and see if that's too far. I just don't want it to be clipping into the wall here. And that's pretty good. I'm going to stick with that. So that's that. So let's make sure we can stack. Yes, we can. Do those placement ones. And as you can see, some of those other changes we made, if you do it wrong, it'll let you place it in the air. So you want to make sure you get that right. Yeah, so it stacks. So now we got us 3 small vaults, 4,000 health. I configurable health, audio, blah, 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 blah. So that's that. Quit doing that. Okay. So, next. Lovely. So, content browser and this lovely bug. Let's save this. That's all correct. Everything is set up there. And like I said, if if ADK locks up, very rarely are you hosed. Most of the time it's doing something on the disk. Sometimes it's got to do a bunch of garbage collection. So just because you copy one file and then you turn around and copy that file again and then it takes 4 times as long, doesn't mean something's wrong with that file. It just means it hit the point where it needed to do some garbage collection before it could finish copying the file. It's not abnormal. That's what I'm going through right now. Is it's doing garbage collection before it can save the asset. So just gonna have to let it sit. Just gonna have to let it do its thing. I'm looking at my disk activity light on my computer case, and it's going crazy. So we're just gonna sit, be patient. I know YouTube, you want it to be cut, but we're just gonna let it do its thing for ease of editing and just to show you how long it normally takes. I figured we would run into this at some point during this tutorial. I'm going to take a Okay, so now let's set up a medium vault just to show how to quickly duplicate our changes. Medium, if I can spell, medium vault. And highlight all those, copy over here. We're going to make copies. And again, we're going to have to go through renaming. We're going to have to go through relinking to the proper stuff for the medium vaults. Because right now everything is pointing over to the small vault assets in the small vault folder. So let's start renaming medium vault, medium vault. Nope, not what I wanted to do. Done with the small vault. Medium vault. Oh, medium vault. So now that we've got everything renamed, we need to start going through and fixing up our links so that it's not pointing to the assets in the small vault folder. So Engram entry, we've got PrimalItem structure here. Inject that in. Now it says small vault. Let's say level 55 and 16 Engram points. Give blueprint to player inventory is already checked. And let's actually, since the small vault already requires large, we don't need to have this require large. Let's actually just have this require small, so that they need to learn the small vault before they can learn the medium vault. So small vault on the medium vault Engram entry. So save, compile. That's all we need to do for the Engram entry for the medium vault. Let's go ahead and take care of the inventory component, show modified only. We're doing half stats. It was originally 150, so 100, or actually half stats would be 75. Medium vault, and then let's make this just 100. I mean, yeah, just 100, that's fine. Save, compile. Close the inventory component. We're done with the inventory component. Open up PrimalItem structure, show only modified properties. Let's change this to medium, lowercase e, a medium. It was originally 20, we're doing half, so 10, 82, so 41, 41. Stack size of 10, structure to build. Remember, this is important. Storage box medium. We're going to set that. Default folder paths we're not going to mess with. Base crafting resource requirements. So let's expand these out. Trying to get through this as quickly as I can. It's originally 300, so 150. Originally 60, so 30. Originally 30, so 15. Originally 60, so 30. And that's it. Save, compile. I think that's all we have to do for the primal item. So now we need to go into the medium vault actor structure itself, right? And we're doing half sizes, so 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. We are going to delete the small vault inventory component, put in the medium vault inventory component, ignore the SV one, that's my slave vaults one. Save, compile, get that set. Come over to defaults. Let's look at, oh, Greg, close that. Show only modified properties. Again, demolish inventory deposit class, kind of a unique thing for vaults. And it uses a self-reference, so it's already set for us. Metal, that's fine. Explosives. Consumes primal item. Remember, this is the second part of that important thing I've been talking about. We need to get our primal item in here for medium vault. So medium vault. We'll have to redefine all of our placement encroachment check offsets for the medium vault. We'll leave all of our placement stuff here. We got that set correctly. We can stack it correctly. We're going to change our visual descriptive name when we're looking at it. The green text we're looking at to medium. Half of 50,000 is 25,000. And I think that's it. Let's go over to our graph. And let's change out the INI option name here from small to medium. Move that over just a smidge. Save, compile, and that's it. That's all we've got to do to set up our medium vault. Literally, that's all we have to do. So let's go ahead and let's get this back over to 25,000. Save, compile. Let's fix our small vault one. Get away from that 4,000 value. Just kind of a pet peeve thing here. Want it to be right. 16,700 for the small vault. Save, compile, and we don't need the small vault to open any further. We'll close that. And I think that is absolutely everything here. We've already got all of our variables set up. All right. Back over to the primal game data, we're going to add our medium vault in, back to these two arrays that we've already been dealing with. Engram entry, get it in there, and then our structure to place, get it in there. Oh, I'm in the wrong spot. Medium vault. Engram entry. See, even I make mistakes, and I set it backwards. That's fine. We'll just stick with it. Doesn't really matter in the order. I do try to keep my Engram indexes matched with my additional structures to place indexes. So since I just flipped these backwards for whatever reason on accident, I'm now going to make sure that I make that backwards. I don't think it matters, but just for my sanity, that's what I'm going to do. Save and compile. And minimize. Now let's play, and we should probably check to make sure our engrams are in our list. View engrams and vault. There's our 40, our 55, and the original vanilla 65. So that's everything there for that. Those should work just fine. I don't see any issues with that. Not thing that. So now we need to do our medium vault. Again, you can right-click the primal item, copy reference to get your cheat command, wrap it in quotes, yada yada. I've already got this all put in my console here, that's why I don't have to do that. So inventory, we've got our 10 stack, the weight was right, we're showing 100, and our scale is right. Replace, we got 25,000, medium vault on the name here, 75 slots here. That is everything. We can't place it way in the air, we can stack it. And that's that. So let's turn on debug structures. So as you can see, our encroachment offsets are not right. So we need to modify that real quick. That's the last thing we do have to change. So while we're here, we'll hit tab. Come back over here to this, back over to medium vault, default tabs, placement. So we are going to need to change all of this up again. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's say 80 there. Placement trace scale. Let's just double this up since it was quarter scale. So 40, 17, so 34, 29 would be 58, 58. Let's see what that gives us. Nothing too great. Well, okay. Interesting. So, X is way off, Y is way off, yada yada yada. I'm not going to go through all this right now. I've already kind of shown you guys how to build out your placement, encroachments, all that good stuff. Pretty much shown you how to do every little aspect here, how to duplicate, how to finish setting up Primal game data. We could go in here, we could turn around, we could, you know, have to define a preview image, have to define a title, have to define a description, and then we could cook the game mod and upload it, and it'd work just fine. And that would be really everything you would need to know to get this mod up and running and working. I don't think there's anything else I need to cover right now. I think I've gotten everything covered. Went over crafting costs, how to set all that stuff up. Went over stack sizing. Went over how to set up the linking between all the actors and the inventory items and the inventory components into the actors. And we went over a little bit of blueprint graph work. Hopefully that was a nice, easy introduction to blueprint graphs that makes a little bit of sense. Feel free to always hop on to the Discord, ArcModding Discord group chat. There's almost always somebody there that can help you. If you don't get an answer, most of the time it's with how you're either structuring your question, or most of the time people want to see that you have put some effort into trying to troubleshoot this issue on your own first before they're going to be willing to offer to help you. Just some ideas to put in your head as you're asking for help. Please be patient with the people on there. Just because you don't get a response in 10 minutes doesn't mean people aren't reading your question. And sometimes it's just a case of they don't know the answer to your question and you're not going to get a response from them. We got people from all time zones in there, so it could be a day, it could be a 2 days, event before you get a proper answer. We've, got really good admin team in there that actually, tries to answer as many questions as we can. We've got a really good advanced group of modders in there that try to answer as many questions as they can. This is just one quick small intro to hopefully try and clarify how Arc is seeing things, how it's bootstrapping things through that map to ultimately the Primal game data file that then ultimately bootstraps over to the rest of your assets. So hopefully that helps clarify some of those issues. Hopefully this helps clarify some of the issues with creating new structure variants and how to, set those things up. And how to get everything in place, organized into your mod so that everything can work properly and works how you want it to work. Like I said, any questions, come into the Discord group. We'll try and take care of you as best we can. Please be patient with us. show a little bit of respect. The guys that have been in there have been doing this for a long time. They've put a lot of effort into trying to help clarify a lot of these things. Just because you don't get it right away might just be you. No offense, but it just might be you. Take some time. Take a step away. Think about it. Take a shower. Whatever you got to do to contemplate and just relax and think on the idea for a moment, and you'll get it figured out. We all had to start somewhere, so. Come on into the chat. Let us know. You know if you have issues. Timestamp this video. Submit this video as a question saying, explain this aspect of the video to me, and we'll try and do our best. So hopefully this helps everybody a little bit better and getting started and getting a better idea of how things work in the Arc Development Kit and how things have to be set up and linked together and how the cooker works to be able to bootstrap through the assets and stuff like that to help cut down on that confusion. We'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one.